Who is y'all to tell me what he diagnosed with and what he looked like and what he sound like? Y'all don't know nothing about God and y'all don't know nothing about nothing. You talking to me like that? So I rebuke everything y'all saying about my child.
People started paying attention, not out of gossip, but concern. Ever since Chrisean made the decision to keep her son off social media, something felt off to those watching from afar. Time passed, and yet there was little sign of growth or developmental progress. Some fans remained hopeful, brushing aside the warning signs, convinced that everything would work itself out. But the truth became harder to ignore when a doctor, after watching a live video circulating on X, confirmed what many had quietly feared. Without serious intervention, Chrisean's son may never develop the ability to speak. As if that revelation wasn't heavy enough, things escalated when Blueface's mother entered the conversation. Without hesitation, she placed the blame squarely on Chrisean, suggesting her own daughter-in-law was the reason her grandson was falling behind. The situation spiraled further. People recalled when Chrisean had first introduced her baby to the AU world, broadcasting his birth live on Instagram and celebrating him as perfect in every way. But to many, that perfection seemed more like denial. Observers began to note unsettling signs. His head barely moved, his hands didn't track motion, and his cry didn't sound like a baby's at all. It was shrill, raw, more like a cat's scream than an infant's whimper. And yet Chrisean insisted everything was fine. The unease deepened during a live stream where she defended her face tattoo of Blueface. In the background, her son cried uncontrollably. The sound pierced through the screen, leaving viewers with an uncomfortable feeling that something wasn't right, not just in that moment, but possibly in the bigger picture. Then came another video. Chrisean was feeding her son, who by then was already 8 months old. She brought the spoon close to his face, but there was no reaction, no excitement, no grabbing, no curiosity. It wasn't until the spoon was inches from his mouth that he even noticed it. For most babies, food is a cue for engagement. For him, it was barely a blip. Concerned viewers flooded her comments, pointing to her well-documented drinking and smoking during pregnancy as a possible cause. One person wrote bluntly, "Chrisean Rock is in denial. Junior isn't hitting milestones. He can't support his head, he doesn't smile or coo." But Chrisean didn't take kindly to the feedback. She snapped back, dismissing the growing concern as nothing more than hate. In her eyes, these were just trolls trying to stir up drama. Yet, for many watching, it didn't feel like hate. It felt like heartbreak. A collective worry that something important was being overlooked, and a child might pay the price. As the conversation around Chrisean's son continued to grow, a new set of opinions started surfacing. Some people argued that what the child was going through might not be the result of Chrisean's smoking or drinking during pregnancy at all, but rather a genetic condition, something completely outside of her control. Others pushed back even, further claiming that the developmental milestones people kept mentioning were just made-up concepts meant to stroke a parent's ego rather than reflect a child's true progress. But how does that argument hold up? Yes, seeing your child hit a milestone is rewarding, but it's not about pride, it's about awareness. Raising a child is no small task, and those benchmarks exist to help parents track development, notice delays early, and take meaningful action when needed. Doctors weighing in online pointed to a much more sobering reality. Based on visible traits in photos and videos, some believed Chrisean's son showed classic physical signs of fetal alcohol syndrome. Small eyes with folds in the corners, an unusually flat midface, large set ears, and a noticeably small head, all features that aligned with the condition. Then there was the sound of his cry. Some said it resembled that of a cat, possibly linked to a rare condition called Chrisean syndrome, or potentially a symptom of alcohol withdrawal in newborns. Viewers also noticed something strange in the wee photos. The baby's pupils sometimes reflected white instead of red. That alone raised concerns about possible vision problems. Still, Chrisean didn't seem shaken. She brushed off the feedback, telling people to stop diagnosing her child from behind screens. According to her, she had already taken him to see real doctors. But for many watching, it didn't feel like strangers crossing boundaries. It felt like a desperate call for someone, anyone, to pay closer attention.
My baby is healthy. They would have told me if he had syndrome. That he's healthy, bro. Just because that picture wasn't that cute doesn't mean I could diagnose my baby on the internet.
Known for broadcasting nearly every waking moment of her son's life, from sleepy morning cuddles to late-night bottle feeds. It seemed like every milestone, no matter how small, was captured for social media. Fans watched as she transitioned from a controversial media figure to a mother, one Instagram story at a time. But the more she shared, the more people started noticing gaps, especially when it came to her son's development. For someone so committed to posting everything, it struck many as strange that there were no updates from pediatric checkups, no videos of Junior reaching common developmental milestones, and certainly no doctor's reassurance that everything was going smoothly. In fact, what people didn't see started speaking louder than what they did. Had everything truly been fine, most assumed Chrisean would have used that as ammunition to silence the growing number of critics questioning her parenting. But her silence on this front felt more like confirmation that something wasn't right. People began speculating, questioning if her son might be facing health or developmental issues that she was avoiding, or worse, deliberately downplaying. Then came Blueface. Though he's hardly a shining example of fatherhood, often absent and equally embroiled in drama, he didn't hold back when it came to calling Chrisean out. He publicly accused her of neglect, specifically pointing fingers at her for delaying a necessary hernia surgery for their son. According to him, she postponed the procedure not due to any medical advice, but simply because she had other things to do. It wasn't until Blueface took to social media to publicly shame her that she finally followed through. Within days, the surgery happened. And true to form, Chrisean rushed to post a glowing update about Junior's fast recovery, trying to redirect the conversation back to a positive note. But the damage was done. The trust, if there ever was any, began to wear even thinner. Blueface. The time Junior was approaching his first birthday, Chrisean uploaded a video of him trying to walk. It was clearly meant to prove something, to show that he was developing just fine. Instead, it had the opposite effect. Rather than reassure her followers, the footage deepened their concern. At almost a year old, Junior still wasn't walking independently. There were no clear signs of verbal development, no baby babble, no responsive laughter, no gestures like pointing or waving. Many viewers commented that he didn't even seem to react to his surroundings in the way most babies typically would. This moment marked a turning point. Critics began voicing what had been whispered in comment sections for months, that Chrisean may not have had this baby out of love or readiness to be a parent, but perhaps as a way to stay connected to Blueface. It was a harsh accusation, but one that some felt explained why so much about her parenting seemed performative, reactive, and inconsistent. Raising a child, especially one who may need additional support, requires stability, patience, and proactive care, none of which Chrisean seemed to display consistently in the eyes of the public. The issue was no longer just about her son's development. It had become a question of motive, maturity, and whether Chrisean truly understood the responsibility she had taken on. Motherhood isn't a storyline for social media. It's a lifelong commitment. And for many watching from the outside, it appeared she was still treating it like content rather than a calling. Her former best friend Jaden added fuel to the fire with comments that hinted at Chrisean living in deep denial. "You can't help someone who doesn't see the problem," she said, echoing the frustration many felt. Eventually, under the weight of all the backlash, Chrisean seemed to retreat. She stopped sharing her son's life online as much, choosing to raise him more privately. And truth be told, most people agreed it was probably the wisest choice she'd made in a long time. But that peace was short-lived. When she brought Junior to church during the debut of her new song Yahweh, people were startled by what they saw, or rather, what they didn't. At nearly 2 years old, Junior showed little curiosity about his surroundings. While children that age are typically exploring, reacting, engaging, he simply sat there, disconnected. It wasn't his disability that upset people. It was the sense that he was a victim of his environment, a child caught in the chaos of two people who hadn't been ready for parenthood from the beginning. Both Chrisean and Blueface seemed more invested in their drama than their duties. The pregnancy was anything but planned, and Chrisean herself had gone online multiple times threatening to end it, while continuing to drink and smoke throughout. Now she appears unwilling to fully acknowledge the consequences of those choices. And that unwillingness is what continues to frustrate the public. It doesn't help that Blueface's mother, Clarissa, has been vocally critical of Chrisean from day one. She's never hidden her resentment, and may be projecting some of that bitterness onto Junior. But even through her harsh words, the heartbreak shows. Clarissa once admitted through tears that seeing her grandson for the first time devastated her. "I didn't even know if he was looking at me, you, or the air," she confessed. "It crushed my heart." Her pain, raw and unscripted, revealed the deeper tragedy, that despite all the drama, all the noise, what's been lost in the shuffle is a little boy who didn't ask for any of this. Clarissa said she loves all her grandchildren no matter what challenges they face, but she couldn't hide the pain of seeing Junior struggle, especially knowing that so much of it might have been preventable. Meanwhile, Chrisean continued to present a carefree image, partying, drinking, and acting as if none of it had any lasting impact. But that illusion is getting harder to maintain. The public isn't waiting for a perfect mom. They're just waiting for a real one who can look at what's happened, admit the truth, and take accountability. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about internet feuds or proving people wrong. It's about a child who deserves better than being treated like collateral in a story that was never about him. After everything that's unfolded, it's hard to ignore the truth staring everyone in the face. People have started to admit that, yes, something may be neurologically off with Chrisean's son. And no, they're not blind or heartless for acknowledging it. That cry, that vacant look in his eyes, it says more than words ever could. Even those who once defended Chrisean are now starting to question her choices, realizing that maybe she's not the victim in this story. The real victim is the child, an innocent baby born into a storm of instability, carelessness, and decisions he had no control over. It's truly heartbreaking to witness an innocent child bearing the consequences of someone else's choices, especially choices made long before he ever had a say. In this case, it's hard to turn a blind eye. There's video evidence clear as day of Chrisean smoking while pregnant, with entire clips captured and broadcast by the Zeus network. These aren't rumors or speculation, they're receipts. So, when people question why her son may now be facing developmental delays, it doesn't come from a place of malice. It comes from concern, frustration, and a growing sense that this child is being failed in real time. And the signs are there. Alarming ones. At nearly 20 months old, Chrisean's son has reportedly shown very limited communication. No babbling, no talking, and only the occasional emotional expression. There's no walking, no clear signs of cognitive or physical progress that typically define toddlerhood. That's not just a slow start. It's a blaring red flag. And, sadly, it's becoming harder and harder for anyone watching to justify or ignore it. What's even more painful is the silence surrounding these concerns. Chrisean, who was once eager to share every detail of her motherhood journey, now dodges the topic. Some believe that deep down, she knows. She knows something isn't right. That this may very well be the result of the way she carried and cared for herself during pregnancy. That perhaps the internet's criticisms hit closer to home than she lets on. But instead of taking accountability and facing the issue head-on, she appears to be hiding behind a wall of denial, deflecting with prayer, faith, and vague reassurances. And here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with having faith. But hope without action, especially when it comes to a child's well-being, is simply not enough. Believing that things will magically improve over time without addressing the root cause is wishful thinking, not responsible parenting. Still, as we navigate this complex and deeply emotional situation, it's crucial not to lose sight of compassion. Chrisean is a young mother facing a storm of challenges, many of which the public rarely sees or fully understands. She could be grappling with postpartum depression or anxiety, feelings of isolation, shame, and an overwhelming sense of fear about her son's condition and her own ability to parent effectively. The glare of social media doesn't lighten the load. It amplifies every error, every hesitation, and every doubt. It turns the private struggles of motherhood into a public spectacle where judgment is swift and unforgiving. While none of this excuses the delays in seeking intervention or fully acknowledging her son's developmental needs,